Greg, are we good? Almost.
Word again, huh? We can either lower ours or you can raise.
Any public comments tonight? Yes, okay. We'll call the Wood Village City Council meeting of May 14th, 2024 to order. And with that, we will begin our meeting with their land acknowledgement statement. Wood Village, the Chinookan people known as the Clackamas and Cascades are the indigenous people of the land now inhabited by the city of Wood Village and other areas of the Columbia River. The valley of Nunchakni was located near today's Blue Lake Park. Ancestral life in these peoples included seasonal round of resource gathering and stewardship from the Wapato fields and fishing areas of the Columbia River to the Cedar and huckleberry gathering areas of the High Cascades. Introduced disease from earlier settlers dramatically reduced the number of these people. They signed the Willamette Valley Treaty in 1855 with the United States government and were forcibly removed to the Grand Ronde Indian Reservation. We thank the descendants of these tribes for being the original stewards and protectors of these lands since time immemorial. We also acknowledge the systematic policies of genocide, relocation, and assimilation that still impact many indigenous Native American families today. We are honored by the collective work of the many Native Nation leaders and families who are demonstrating resilience, resistance, revitalization, healing, and creativity. We are honored to be guests upon these lands. Would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we'll start a meeting tonight with citizens' comments. And yes, and please, would you come up forward? And we had a little visit at the beginning, but I didn't get your name.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. My name is Kevin Mansfield. I live in Portland, Oregon. It's a pleasure to be back here again. I was just here in
A couple
March.
meetings ago.
A couple
Yeah.
months ago. And my subject for tonight is appreciation. And when I was here a couple of months ago, Mayor and City Council was very nice and gave us the proclamation declaring April as Parkinson's Awareness Month for the city of Wood Village. Sorry, I saw it in my head. I usually have it written down. That night, Mayor, I stayed for the entire meeting like I usually do when I go to these city council meetings. And you guys had a portion of all the people and organizations that have used the city council chambers for different events. Parkinson's Resources, which I'm part of. I'm representing myself as a facilitator of Parkinson's Resources of Oregon and as a public policy ambassador with Michael J. Fox Foundation. But in your meeting that you had a pie chart and we were a little itty bitty sliver because we were privileged enough to use the city council chambers before for our meetings. You asked a question, out of all the people that have used the city council, how many have given you appreciation? I remember right, the numbers was very little, which made me feel bad because we're not that type of person. Tonight, I want to share with you, express to you our gratitude for signing the proclamation for us and for letting us meet here as a support group, Gresham support group, for at least 6 months. Because of our regular place got flooded during that last ice storm. So tonight, Mayor and City Council members, I have put together with my grandchild. Sorry, try not to get emotional. We have for you tonight this 2024 an appreciation certificate award on behalf of all the members of the Gresham Parkinson Support Group to Mayor John Miner and the City Council of Wood Village. On this day, April 30th, 1924, in appreciation for declaring April as Parkinson's Awareness Month for the City of Wood Village, for your kind and generous help in letting us use the Wood Village City Council in our time of need. We thank you for your excellent consideration and for helping people with Parkinson's. I signed it as a facilitator with Parkinson's Resources of Oregon and a public policy ambassador with Michael J. Fox Foundation. I was also able to get 2 employees from the Parkinson's Resources of Oregon to sign it. Today, when we had the privilege of meeting here with the Gresham Support Group, we had everybody in the group that was here to sign it. With that in mind, I would like to present this to you.
Kevin, I'm gonna come right over there and you and I will get you'll present that to me and we'll get a picture. All right?
Awfully sweet.
On behalf of the council. Your, Now, Kevin, you know what? You don't have to stay the whole meeting tonight. You're under no obligation. But we'd love to have you if you prefer to stay. Our public safety report. No. Yes, Public Works proclamation. Very good. Former Public Works individual employee and director, not here, but at other stores.
Yes. Okay.
Go ahead.
All right. This coming week is the National Public Works Week. And the mayor has asked me to read this proclamation for the city of Wood Village. Advancing quality of life for all. Whereas public works professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, emergency management and services that are all vital, that are vital importance to sustainable and resilient communities and the public health, high quality of life and well-being of the people of the city of Wood Village. And whereas the support of an understanding and informed citizenry, oh boy, is vital to the efficient operation of public works systems. And the programs such as water, sewer, streets, and public buildings, solid waste collection. And whereas the health and safety and comfort of this community greatly depend on these facilities and services. And whereas the year 2024 marks the 64th annual National Public Works Week sponsored by the American Public Works Association. Now, therefore, our Mayor, John C. Miner of the City of Wood Village, do hereby designate the week of May 19th through the 25th of 2024 as the National Public Works Week. And he urges all citizens to recognize the substantial contributions they make to support the health, safety, and quality of life.
Thank you, Counselor. And I'll make the first comment here if I can. Erica, and to your staff and the Public Works Department, and certainly to the rest of the staff, the City of Wood Village. Thank you very much for the work you do. And Becky, I know that you're also now within that department. So the work that you're doing is often that unseen work. It's often the stuff that really makes the city work, but people don't notice it. And that's a good thing. We want certainly things to work and work consistently. But we also want you to understand that that's a vital part of this city, and the city, this council certainly understands that, because we hear the reports and we get to get down, so to speak, in the weeds a little bit here. So on behalf of the council, thank you very much. Other councilors want any comments?
I take it never for granted to turn on the water and have our lovely city have water. I've lived here for 22 years and I've never been able to not have water. And that is really a huge plus. Where I have lived in other places and parts of the world, and there's been lots of times where I've turned on the water and it not be there. And so that is very, very pleasant to have. And the same goes for sanitary sewer. That is just awesome as far as that's concerned. And our streets, we can't be any more pleased with the fact that we just don't have potholes. And the water goes where it's supposed to go when it rains here. And I'm just telling you, we've got the best.
I think we just are so used to having these things, right? And we, coming into council, having the opportunity to kind of go out with Erica and see the behind the scenes shows a lot of appreciation, because it's not just turning on the faucet and the water's running. There's a lot more to it. And just this week is just, or next week is just a way to show appreciation. So thank you.
Yeah, as everyone's mentioned, it's those non-visible to everybody that makes the importance. The park, we see it today. It'll be packed later this evening. Just the safety of facilities that they take care of is also important. So we appreciate it.
Anything else from city manager? Greg?
It's our pleasure.
Yeah.
Again, safe, clean drinking water. And when you flush the toilet, the magic of every flush, and you don't see it.
Yeah,
That's important.
well, I hope there's a great celebration next week, all throughout the week. So thank you, Counselor, for reading that proclamation. The review of the bills paid. No, we're going to public safety report. So Chief Stewart, if you would, please.
Thank you, Mayor, councilors. I'd just like to echo my thanks to the Public Works as well. Oftentimes our lanes become congruent. So it's always a pleasure with the partnership we share here in Wood.
Thank you.
So I assume everybody's had a chance to review the report. Oh, there we go. A couple items I just want to touch on here. You may have noticed that in this current 30-day period, the assaults reported were 4, as opposed to last month where there were 2. I did some research on those and found that out of those 4, 1 was confirmed assault situation. The others were unfounded. So as you know, oftentimes what's necessarily what is reflected after the investigation has been completed. So On the stolen vehicle, you might note on one page that reports 2 stolen vehicles reported within the 30-day time frame. And then on the actual stolen vehicle report, there's none listed. And that is due to the similar circumstance where 2 calls were coded as stolen vehicles. And then after investigation, they were determined not to actually either have a victim or be able to prove ownership or whatnot. So there was actually no stolen vehicle report taken. The other thing I want to touch on is the thefts reported, 30 in this current 30-day period as opposed to 16 in the month prior. Most of those were reflected from retail theft, primarily Walmart and Kohl's in the Wood Village Shopping Center. And then there was one from the Wood Village Green Mobile Home Park, which was a stolen vehicle plate, and then one from the Wood Village Mobile Home Park, which was a toy hauler. But again, the majority of those were retail thefts. Just to address that, we have been doing several targeted missions to address some of these community issues. One is a retail theft mission. We did one previously where we solicited the loss prevention employees from each of these stores, and they were able to contact our deputies directly instead of going through dispatch. And at the same time, we had a surplus of deputies working on this mission to be able to respond accordingly. So we plan to continue those missions to try and combat this elevated increases. It's tough because a lot of these businesses are spread out in our area, but I'm hopeful that future missions like this will help combat some of these theft issues. So other than that, I really don't have anything significant to report, but I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I have a question.
Yeah.
There's a walkway on not a walkway, on Arata where there's a Fred Meyer's. There's 2 parked vehicles that are, people are inhabiting those vehicles, but they looked like they're not mobile vehicles and they've been there
Okay, on Arata?
on Arata and the Fred Meyer's parking lot. It's a Honda Accord, like a 98, and then a black truck. And the only reason why I bring it up is because my daughter does walk that pathway to go to Chipotle and stuff. So I was
Okay.
curious if you noticed it or, I didn't want to bring it up. I was just kind of monitoring it, but it's never moved.
Just in front of Lowe's essentially.
Yeah, so it's facing Lowe's and there's a silver Honda
Okay,
Yeah.
sedan and then a black truck. I don't know.
Is it a black box truck that it kind of moves around through the community here? I mean, a big,
No, no,
black.
no, it's just a regular
just, okay.
truck, but it's been there. It's the walkway that you do.
Yeah.
I don't know if you go.
Yeah, I know.
He goes around the same time that I go to the gym, so I always,
Yeah. I have not seen that.
well, do you go all the way through Fred Meyer's?
No. we
Oh, you
don't go-
stop at the corner.
Well, sometimes we go up a little bit further. We don't go around it or on the back.
Oh, so you stop at my neighborhood and then loop around.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah, so it's,
Okay. so like across from Chipotle right there.
To quickly add, so that's Sire Equities property and we're in good contact with them and they have they know the Hope team directly. And so they do pretty well of seeing who's there legitimately, who's not. So we'll make a note to have
yeah,
them.
because I'm surprised that they haven't moved, the fact that they've just been there. And the vehicles, usually like vehicles move, so that way they're not like,
All right, we'll take a look at it.
thank you.
I have noticed, and maybe we all drive up there, that it seems like Lowe's is getting maybe lax. Because there's a lot of overnight vehicles
Oh,
there
I've seen those
and trucks
trucks.
and RVs. And so they may be, decided they're going to be a little more friendly to that, but it attracts. I understand the semi is waiting to be offloaded in the morning. And maybe an RV that might be there because they're doing something and they've got permission. So, but that's all my observation just has been, it seems like there's
The
more
semis, yeah.
overnight cars there, but
My nephew parks there once a week
Yeah.
and then he offloads, he gets there about 4:30 in the evening. And then he has to wait until 7:00 in the morning and then he pulls into the back of Lowe's.
Okay.
And he's there twice a week. And then he goes over to over to the Home Depot. So, it's just one of the big truckers that'll park there.
I'll touch base with Lowe's management and see kind of what their stance is on it and where we're at currently. So
Sure.
And we've talked with Sire Equities ownership group of, like, especially around like the trucking, because we've got some complaints from area neighbors, and it's like, who's there legitimately, again, waiting to offload or otherwise, and who's kind of using it as a de facto truck stop. And so we kind of rely on their management in conjunction with the Hope team.
Yeah. Any other questions for Chief Stewart?
I had maybe can't share too much, but the incident that happened in the Wood Village Green Mobile Home Park. You know, I know this is probably not so much in your line of work, but after kind of an incident like that happens to the community, you know, what kind of resources would there be out there to share with them in case they need some aftercare per se of an incident of that nature?
Yeah, great question. So there is a pre-established victims assistance for anybody that was directly impacted, and that one touched a lot of people. So, you know, hopefully they were contacted. This usually goes through the district attorney's office, and they were contacted with resources. We also offer those at the scene when we're contacting victims or potential victims of crimes. We'll make sure that they know what resources are available for them. And as always, if there's anything more we can do, you know, please let me know. But yeah, that's generally how that works. That was such a unique event because it touched so many people in a
Yeah.
small area, you know, so, but yeah, that's generally how the resources are delegated out.
Thank you.
Is the TIPS program still active?
I'm sorry?
TIPS, the trauma
Yes,
intervention?
TIPS is still active, yeah. In fact, June Vining is the director of that, and she works pretty intimately with us in our peer support program as well. So, and she's kind of technically a volunteer of the sheriff's office part-time. So, yeah.
Anything else?
All right.
Chief, thanks for the report.
Always a pleasure.
Review of the bills paid. Any questions there? Consent agenda,
Move to approve the consent agenda.
I second.
moved and seconded. All in favor of approving the consent agenda?
Aye.
Presentation, Seth, on BOAC. And this is and we are doing the presentation. I don't believe this is an action item tonight. It's coming back to us, isn't it, Seth?
It's resolution 11.
Yes.
Yeah,
Four.
yeah.
Next year.
Back. 1 second. I don't think I dragged my presentation over from the folder. Oh, there we go.
There it is. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, councilors. Tonight, I have an update for you on the Bureau of Emergency Communications Intergovernmental Agreement. So BOAC is the Bureau of Emergency Communications. It is the public safety answering point for Multnomah County, which means they are the sole authorized center to receive 911 calls within Multnomah County. They're a bureau of the city of Portland, and we have had an agreement for cost sharing for that service and other services since 1995. So we've been working on updating the intergovernmental agreement that covers this since 2018. So we're 6 years into the process. One of the big issues and probably the biggest sticking point is how costs are distributed. So a committee of finance people from various user jurisdictions and agencies met over the course of 18 months to take a look at what the best way of updating that. You know, the IGA had a lot of just cleanup of referencing to data and offices that no longer exist. So this was kind of it was getting a little long in the tooth and we wanted to do an update. And so we took a look at that, specifically at the cost allocation. And one of the recommendations that came out of that work group was to split the two functions that BOAC does, which is receive the 911 calls and then dispatch first responders. So they are mandated to be the 911 call taking point, but the dispatch is something that they are not required to do. That was part of the IGA, was that all of the first responder agencies within Multnomah County agreed that a combined dispatch center, rather than transferring it to separate dispatch centers, was both more cost effective and would provide better service to citizens. So we reviewed that as part of the user board. We also reviewed that in 2020. We also reviewed that in 2023. And to give you a little background on kind of why that piece is important is up until this point, medical calls were paid for entirely by fire dispatch. So it's a very simple population-based system, but it wasn't really reflective of the work. And back in the 90s, 911 didn't dispatch a lot of medical calls. What we've seen, especially over the last few years in the pandemic, is the majority of the call load and the workload coming into BOIC that's been increasing hasn't been more police calls or more fire calls. It's been more low acuity medical calls. That's really driven kind of the crisis in 911 dispatch centers across the nation, and has been increasing call response times from 15 seconds to over 80. Now, the 911 agency is working on bringing that back down, but that's been what's driving a lot of the workload. So when we looked at the cost allocation, we split it into those two functions, the 911 call answering and the dispatch. And they allocated that based on the number of positions they have on their operations floor at any given time of who's doing what. So the majority of the cost is the 911 call taking, and that would remain distributed based on population. The dispatch allocation would be based on basically how many calls came in for each type, and then it would be allocated out to different agencies. So they figure dispatch is roughly a third of their cost, and most of that is police, a little bit for fire, and then EMS makes up the rest. So one further modification that was made was in talking in this work group with the county EMS representative, was they pointed out that for medical calls, a lot of times you don't just dispatch an ambulance, you dispatch a fire unit and an ambulance. So the committee agreed that that would be equitable to split the cost of those calls where you have multiple agency dispatch or agency type dispatch between both fire and EMS. So what does that end up looking like? You can see that the vast majority of the call volume for what 911 deals with is police calls. That's why the majority of the cost is there. But you can see that EMS calls are a much bigger portion of the than fire. We get a lot more medical demand than we do fire. And of the medical calls, we further looked at how much of those were just ambulance dispatch and a combined fire and ambulance dispatch. And then this is kind of shows how the cost would be allocated among the different agencies. So all the police costs get allocated among the folks who provide, the agencies who provide police within the county. Fire gets allocated to the people who provide fire. And then EMS gets allocated to county because they manage the EMS contract. So this is a busy graph, and I'm sorry, I kind of, hopefully to make sense, is we spend about $35 million on the Bureau of Emergency Communication Operations. 24 million of that is for 911 call taking. And so that's allocated amongst the jurisdictions by population, because essentially it's a service that if you have a person and they have a phone, they have access to that service. So distributing those costs by population makes sense. I also want to note that our state 911 tax that we get pays just for this function. It actually can't be used on dispatch services. It has to be wholly consumed by the 911 call taking. So if we talk about increasing the 911 call tax to pay for this, it would only pay for the 911 call taking portion of this. It would not pay for the dispatch portion. So for the dispatch operations, there's about $11 million that we would allocate out. You can see again, most of that goes to police, and then based on call volume, Portland Police Bureau, Gresham Police Department, Multnomah County Sheriff's Office, they would get allocated a portion of that $6.7 million. Then we drop that into our fire and EMS buckets, and then go through a process where I said that we would split the fire EMS calls equally between fire and EMS, the ones that are shared. And that gets us to kind of our totals of who pays what. So the reason why this is important, why I spent some time on that is that's been a chief issue that the county has objected to, is essentially that they don't feel like should have to pay for the dispatch service, or they shouldn't have to pay and they don't want AMR to pay. So it has been sitting at the county since April of 2021. So we've tried various outreach efforts to kind of move this forward or start a conversation, the latest of which was part of the letter that the mayor sent to the chair regarding the two paramedics on AMR response vehicles. Also included, hey, we should really, if we're talking about this service and we're having a conversation with elected officials, we should move forward and kind of unblock this. And what came out of that was, it seems as though the county is under the impression that the user board currently didn't have the power to change the cost allocation methodology. It has, in working with the 911 agency in the original 95 agreement, it does have that power, and it's changed it twice before, once in 2000 and once in 2005. So we talked about this at a staff level because all the people who are on the user board, and there are people who represents both the dispatch agencies and the cities that are represented, talked about what do we do about this? We can either keep the existing IGA and kind of scrap the whole effort. We can allow the county to essentially dictate what is and is not in the IGA. We can, under the existing IGA, update the cost allocation, or we can try and forward this to all of the boards for approval and get this conversation elevated to the elected official level. Staff felt, and kind of the user board felt, that really there's not a lot more that we as city staff or county staff can do to try and reach an agreement. It really needs to be a discussion amongst elected officials on what the policy is, because it's moved from a how do we move the money around and who should pay, like what the best recommendation using cost allocation practices is, to we don't want to pay what we don't want to pay. So there needs to be someone to kind of sit down and figure that out. And that's not essentially staff's job staff can't do that on behalf of the elected officials. So the other objection is one that's more of a technical objection, or not necessarily objection. They had an issue about whether or not they would be BOEC would be considered an agent of record versus custodian of record. And I parse this down to about the finest level I can. It's about whether or not when BOEC gets an information request, they have to notify the agency or not. So if BOEC's a custodian, then they can fulfill the Human Information Act requests without contacting the jurisdiction to which the call applies, versus not being able to. And that has some issues with, especially on police calls, if there's an ongoing investigation, as a police department, you would want to know whether or not someone was asking for records and whether or not, and then authorize whether or not those were released, or whether it was part of a pending investigation and they could push back on that. So all of that to say, we told the county, we can have carve out language for you to do whatever you want, but everyone else wants to be notified in case there's a public records request. Because that, even if we release the information, we at least want to know that it's out there and the people are asking about it. So, and honestly, we're a little unclear of, it seems like there might be multiple departments within the county that have different opinions. And we're not sure who does the tiebreaker when that gets locked up in a little bit of bureaucratic no man's land. So those are the objections. Kind of next steps moving forward of kind of how we want to, again, bring this forward. And what I've explained to the staff at the county is, they've kind of said part of their objection to the cost allocation is they have a policy where they won't backfill or fund 911 or the medical response with any property tax or general fund contribution from their general fund. They're not willing to do that, and that needs to be essentially a zero cost. Whatever they need to provide the service for the money they can raise off of it, which I get. And my response back to them is our council has a policy that we don't pay for services for which we don't have any input in how they're provided. Because the way that the model works now, we are essentially subsidizing the county's medical response by paying for their dispatch service, which is not typical. In Clackamas County, they don't have a consolidated dispatch, or at one point didn't have consolidated dispatch. In other parts of the country, AMR has their own dispatch center that the 911 call takes the call, and then it passes it off to AMR to dispatch their own units, and there's not any integration in that regard. So we're kind of atypical in the fact that a private company is not asked to either provide the service for themselves or pay for the service so that it can be provided to them in a cost-efficient manner. We're in the position where, and I tell people this, the only company that's a for-profit company is the only one who's not paying for this service. And I can't sit in front of my council and explains why that should be the way it is. So all of that to say, we've kind of reached an impasse. So at our July meeting, we've been doing some work to educate and kind of bring this back up, since a lot of people tuned out after 2021. And so we're pulling together some more groups to kind of revisit and update some of the IGA language. There's a scheduled vote at the user board July meeting to actually change the cost allocation under the 1995 agreement, hoping that that will unstick the process, because it seems to be stuck at the county level of how to move forward. So we're hoping that by removing their objection to the cost allocation, we can move forward with a broader IGA update. After that, we would propose having a 5-mayor letter, which would be the 3 East County cities, Gresham, and the city of Maywood Park, who also has a seat on the user board, essentially writing a letter of support for the user board's decision to begin charging AMR for their portion of dispatch costs, or the county paying for that on their behalf. We're going to continue to reach out to the county and be in contact with them. And then after the July meeting, we would bring a resolution forward to the council to essentially authorize city manager to execute the agreement once it's made its final edits on those 2 particular points, both the cost allocation and the agent of whether they are the issue of whether they are a custodian or agent of record. So I feel like I've talked a lot in a little bit and covered a lot of ground. Pause and see if there's any questions of kind of.
There's a lot here.
There's a lot here, and it'd been a while. So it's been on the APP for a number of years. We kept thinking we were so close. We've got everything. We just got to get these couple things ironed out, and it's turned into I'm hoping we don't hit a decade in terms of the
Well, the first thing I want to say is just recognize Seth for being on this BOAC user board. He's been chairing that board for how long?
Since 2020, I think.
2020. So he's been chairing that board. And as you listen to this tonight, there are a lot of moving parts, and there's a lot of history, and there's a lot of inertia not to make a change in this IGA. So I don't expect everybody to grab it, because Seth has talked to me a couple times, and I'm maybe getting a little bit of it. But the point I'd reemphasize, as Seth said, is that AMR is being dispatched, and they get paid through Medicare, and they get paid through other people, that insurances, et cetera, and they're not paying for the dispatch. And that's pretty unusual for a profit entity to be being able to go out and respond to the calls that they're already going to get paid for through insurances to not be charged by our county. So that's one piece. The other piece, Seth, and you have to help me here, but the agent of record or custodian, that language, you send it back to Gresham and or county and let them do what they're going to do. The problem you've been having as you begin to look at this is you can't get records. Would you, and I don't know if you've got them since we last talked, but I know when you wanted to find out the call volume and for AMR, you couldn't get those.
No, and that hasn't changed in the
Okay.
chair's latest communication.
Can you put that slide back up that showed the breakdown? That one there. Thank you.
And I apologize, this, one of the cells got zeroed out. That should have a number. It must have.
I'm sorry?
I'm just pointing out that on this diagram, I just noticed one of the cells got zeroed out, but the total is correct. There was just a.
Oh, no
So can
problem.
I understand what the mayor is saying is that we weren't able to retain the records with them being listed as an agent?
So BOAC has all of the records of the 911 calls,
Uh-huh.
and they can either act, and that we're not proposing that they transfer those records to us. Nobody wants that to deal with because those
Right.
are confidential and would be duplicating. The issue is whether or not they are a custodian or an agent of record, and a custodian is able to operate, they own the records essentially. And so they don't have to contact anyone if they get information requests. If they are an agent acting on our behalf and just storing the records for us, which really is how they've been operating since the agreement started. The whole issue that came up was they were trying to clarify what their role was, because it was a little unclear back in the 90s when they were putting this together, what their role was. And so they wanted some more specificity in that. And that's where City of Gresham lawyers, county lawyers, and City of Portland lawyers all got together and hashed out a bunch of stuff to try and make sure that everyone was in agreement. City and the county ultimately disagreed and on kind of what the terms meant. And they just agreed to disagree on what the terms meant and just specified what the outcome was that the county wanted. Saying, we're not going to comment on the legal definition of what these things are and why we believe this versus you believe this. We're just going to say, if you want it done this way, we will do it this way. If you want it done the other way, we will do it that way, rather than getting into. And I would need to have some help from the City of Portland lawyers to explain the finer detail of what exactly it was that they didn't agree upon. But it comes out to essentially telling the county, you tell us what you want us to do and what the relationship is, and we will do that.
And the issue the mayor is talking about is a kind of a separate issue related to AMR response time data, which the county says that's not our data. And then AMR says that's proprietary, so you can't have it.
Okay.
So-
And that's one where we've gone back and forth a little bit. We're not asking them to release it as a public record, but we believe that they should share it with other first responder agencies like Gresham Fire. Currently, they don't share any call volume response time of when they show up. Gresham, when we ask Gresham kind of Gresham can tell us when they show up to a scene. They can't tell us when AMR shows up or leaves or what the resolution is, because there's no data loop back from anything that AMR.
Yeah, not unlike our sheriff's report kind of shows the average response time, times are in the report. No one gets that from AMR.
No, the county purports to be able to
Have
view
it.
it, but don't.
Yeah.
Is this
don't.
because of health?
Like a.
No. You're not making any recommendation or comment here
On that particular piece.
on the
that's-
custodian or agent, but isn't that the crux of it? If they're a custodian, they can either give us the information or not. If they're an agent and it belongs
No,
to the users.
the provision AMR cites in the RS is about confidentiality of medical
Okay.
response records, which wouldn't change
Okay,
is completely separate from this agent custodian question.
okay, that's within their contract they've got with the county. That language, my guess is. Well, that's all right, that's all right. Other questions? We're not doing anything with it tonight except trying to get our arms around it.
Yeah.
When does the current IGA expire, or is it done and we're just living on
Oh, there you go.
It's a question that should have been asked in 1995.
1995?
It's basically perpetual until, the hard part is if somebody wanted to leave, they could, but then they would be responsible for providing their own dispatch service. And nobody wants to do that.
And what's the sense on like the other cities on this? You know, are they kind of in line with what, we're, I don't want to say that we're, but like, with the suggestions here or next steps?
I've met with all of the other cities' staff that are on the user board. And all the citizen members and all the Portland Police and Fire both have a representative. I'd be surprised if when we do the vote, it's not 15, 16 to 1, whoever ends up showing up on that day. Really, this is the only person who objects to this is, or at least has gone on record as objecting to what we're trying to do, is the county. And to be fair, I respect the staff that we're working with, and they've been very helpful on a lot of things. We just don't have, they've essentially said, we understand your position. We think that the way you've gone about this has been, I mean, we're not springing anything last minute on. This has been going on. We've been telling them we're going to be working on this since 2018, and the recommendation came out in 2020. So there's not any last minute. So it's been good working with the staff, but they've essentially said, this is a fair way of doing it. We just can't pay for it. So that's kind of where we've left it.
So basically, all we would be doing is just pushing hard on a recommendation for the county to say, okay, we'll change the language and then send out this new.
It doesn't even change the language. I mean, short of the custodial thing, it doesn't even change the language. It just updates the cost methodology, which is already in the current language and has been done 2 other times since 1995.
Yeah. And really the goal is I don't know that this is the right cost allocation. This is the best we came up with. I think that where we've gotten stuck is this needs to get elevated to a level for someone who makes decisions at the county. And I've reached out to the chief of staff when Chair Kafori was on board. Unfortunately, that was in the last year of her term, and so there wasn't. And I've also reached out to the chief of staff for the county chair when they came out to McMinimans and did their meeting greet. I pulled the chief of staff aside and said, "Hey, this issue's been lingering. We need to take a look at it." And there's a series of emails that then wasn't able to get a firm response. And then we met with a policy analyst back in the fall who was trying to work on some of the AMR stuff. And again, met a couple of times and then couldn't get a response. And to be fair, I think both those people have left the office since then. But it's trying to figure out who at the county actually can make the decision to move forward and kind of consider this at the board level.
So with the exception of the county, the user board is unanimous.
I don't want to speak
Well,
for them, but I would be surprised if there was anyone else.
You anticipate that based on the conversations that you've been having, is
But
that correct?
So
Most
you need
everyone.
some kind of sunset on it.
So the idea underneath the new IGA is there would be some exhibits related to performance measures, the custodian issue, cost allocation, the who's on the list of the user board and the bylaws, which could be modified by the user board without having to take the whole thing to all of the 6 or 7 boards that would have to consider it. And kind of, so the idea with this one would be perpetual, where the IGA would be a broad framework and there'd be the ability to change who's on the list of authorized users, who's on the jurisdictional list without having to route it. That would take 6 years to get it back in front of anyone. So
Right.
That would be the idea with the new IGA.
Okay, we probably, we may need more, time. And Seth, you keep us, if we need a little time at another meeting because you've learned something else to make it simpler rather than more complicated, but, we'll let you talk.
And, you know, when I thought back into who was actually here in council when we gave the first update
Yeah.
of this on 20, I think Councillor Clark was here, but he has left and come back since. then. So we wanted to make sure
Okay.
to get this in front of you
Yeah.
before we were asking, putting it out there.
Thank you. Beth, I think, are you up for the next one too?
That's.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
That show.
That was probably,
Yeah.
I don't want to say like, I think that might have been
The
the,
Seth Hour.
Yeah.
It's an hour. That's easier.
Yeah, we,
to say.
this one should move along.
No, you didn't say.
I know.
probably the longest one of the night on the Seth show. These other ones should.
Hold on to your tongue.
Okay, pay attention. Here we go.
Just try saying.
Mayor,
Go, Seth.
city councilors. The next item on the agenda is the investment policy. This is something that you guys saw on February 27th. We presented a sample policy, talked about kind of the history of where we'd been with our investments, what we were looking at in the future, and the idea that we needed to kind of, if we're going to be looking at doing some investments,
Figured it out.
we want to make sure that we have a policy in place that's following best practices, that's put some guidelines from you all to us on kind of what you want to have for investments. So there's best practices that are recommended by Government Finance Officers Association, the Oregon State Treasury, and the Association of Public Treasurers. General purpose, this is the priorities that we discussed at the February 27th meeting. Preserve our capital, manage our liquidity, so no one goes to jail, and try and earn a reasonable return. So broad goals, and that's included in the attachment exhibit for the adopted policy. These are what we presented as kind of what the bookends are of what we can invest in. There have been a few tweaks to this. We added the local government intermediate fund and changed some of the percentages based on some feedback from the Oregon State Treasury. They've issued some updates, and I think one of the ratings we had flipped here, so we flipped those back to make sure that they corresponded to the corporate bond appropriately. Big takeaway is we're not planning on locking up our money for more than in any one security for more than 5 years. And overall, we don't want to have a weighted average of more than 3 years. We want to keep this fairly medium term based on, again, a cash flow analysis, which would be presented at the time which we asked you to actually make the investment decision. So updates, after the February 22nd meeting, we submitted the sample policy after incorporating your feedback, we sent that to the Oregon State Treasury. They have a short-term bond fund. They have a short-term fund board that meets quarterly that needs to approve these updates in order to stay in compliance with Oregon revised statutes. They gave us 25 recommendations of things they would like to have tweaked. A lot of those were adding definitions for interest rate risk, add some language about what the auditors are going to do as part of their annual review, update some references to different Oregon revised statutes that applied to the bullet points that we were talking about. They wanted to add some protection clauses for your budget investment officer for indemnification and prudent person. They wanted to add a general scope at the top to help kind of clarify what the intent was. And then a lot of it was descriptions on different ratings and how they were going to be applied. So overall, we incorporated 27 of the 25 recommendations. The one that we didn't was related to selection criteria for competitive pricing. One, because we don't feel like we're going to do anything that's competitive investment. And two, anything that they would be covered by that would also be covered by the Oregon Purchasing Code. So we would have to get competitive bids if we met those thresholds. So, and it was a really long section, to be honest. So, but it was good to get feedback. I attended the board meeting virtually, got some good feedback from them. They said good job. You should have an investment policy and we're glad that you're implementing one. So we made the changes to the sample policy to basically, to incorporate almost all of their comments. That's included as an exhibit. That concludes my presentation. I'm free to answer any questions you might have.
Questions? There a motion?
I move to approve resolution 11-2024, adopting the City of Wood Village's investment policy.
Second.
Moved and seconded to adopt resolution 11-2024. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously.
Fantastic.
That's
you.
one of those things that's it's good to have.
Yeah.
When we need it. Okay, Seth, we're going on to building fees.
Episode 3.
This is
Episode 3 of the South Show.
Oh, yeah.
episode 3. Short and run. So, all right. Building fee increases. So we last increased our building fees on October 25th, 2022 council meeting.
Oh, it's not a
Aye.
decrease.
What we found out subsequent to this update has incorporated an update 4 years of basically indexing their fees by 5% a year. We didn't capture the July 1st, 2023 increases. So we're trying to basically sync up our fees with Gresham in terms that anything that's a pass-through cost to us is going to be reflected in our fees. So when we did a presentation probably 4 or 5 years ago where we did an analysis of our permit fees and presented to council. And the long and short of that was we are subsidizing this function, which is good because we don't ever want to build up bank balance because those become restricted funds and they're difficult to track and make sure that we're spending appropriately. And council indicated that they didn't want to raise the minimum fees on permits because the analysis showed that we spend a lot of staff time and cost on small permits and handholding for people who come in that have never really done anything before. Council said, that's okay. We want people to come in, even if they have something small, to make sure that it gets permitted. And we don't want to increase the cost to the point where people would be like, oh, I don't want to spend. If the minimum's, $120, but individually it's only 20, we want people to come in and get that. And so that was the direction of council. We haven't heard anything from you or from the community that would cause us to revisit that. So we've kept the lower minimum permit fees where they are applicable. So let me talk a little bit about the process. This is a timeline based on what happened last time. So we have to council, if you want to adopt the fees or increase the fees, you have to pass a resolution. We then send that to our building official to review. Our building official is Sean Blair with Gresham. He reviews it and then he submits it to the building codes division at the state. They have a 45-day window where they put that out for comment. Once that comment period ends, we can then enact an ordinance, which can adopt it and with an effective date. So if things go the way that they went last time with that, giving Sean enough time to adequately review it, and hopefully that should be quick since we're essentially just matching what Gresham's doing. We would anticipate bringing this back to council at your last July meeting with an effective date of August 1st. Now, I will say that as a separate part of the process, we've been Becky's been working with Mary. The state has mandated online permitting. So basically your permits need to be here. People need to be able to apply for permits online. The state is doing a program for municipalities and organizations that aren't large enough to have their own permitting system that we can then work with them to do. And as part of that, some of the same folks within a different division, Building Codes Division is in, have provided some feedback that on our fees and fee structures because they review it kind of to make sure that it's in compliance with what their standards are. So all of that to say, the building official review, we already have some comments back from the state on some tweaks that they want to have made to our language. That would be something that our building official, Sean, and BCD would work out as part of that review. Just to say, what we adopt now with the resolution might be tweaked from what we then moves through the ordinance, because we anticipate BCD giving the same comments to our building official that they've given to us through this permitting process, which Gresham has not done because Gresham already has its own online system. So they didn't have to, as long as they had their own online system, they didn't have to state's program, which is a no cost to us, but no financial cost, but does cost staff time and working with the state. So I just wanted to put that caveat out there that we got those comments back in the last week and didn't update the language in front of you because we feel like that will come out as part of this building official review or BCD review of things that they want to have us tweak to the language that they believe is in more compliance with the regulations that we have.
We're not approving any numbers right now. All we're doing.
You would
is
be approving the resolution that would
Resolution.
allow us to then
Yeah.
start this process, but it wouldn't be enacted until the ordinance is
Right.
passed after that 45-day window.
Questions?
So I'm going to recap real quickly what the changes are. Most of the changes are related to Gresham's per hour billing rate. They're going from 150 to 166. These are really specialty items. Large contractors pay these if they have to get re-inspections, if they're asking for additional services, things that are beyond what is included with your standard permit. We're increasing some fees to align with Gresham. None of them seem out of line or kind of out of line with inflation. They did a little bit in this last round of different fee consolidation where they're not charging as much with as much specificity for some of the services that they offer. They're doing a little bit of an all-in-one pricing. And here's kind of an example related to the structural code. And then the last two items are we made sure that we aligned with fee roundings, where they adopted a methodology where if it's under $10, it's to the cent. If it's over $10, it's rounded to the nearest dollar. And then they have a manufactured home section that we didn't incorporate the last time because it was on a different schedule. And so we'd be adding the manufactured home, which really, it's just an installation setup of a manufactured home structure. They're updating their fees from $350 to $387, and we would just be having that as kind of an all-in-one fee if someone wants to permit a new manufactured home. So it's adding the manufactured home. We're doing some fee rounding. There's some fee consolidation, but most of this is just indexing the fees for inflation.
No questions? Is there a motion?
I move to approve resolution 12-2024, a resolution updating the master fee schedule, including adjusting building fees and amended.
Second that.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, councilors, thank you.
Seth hour is over, but the evening of Greg is just.
Oh, gee whiz.
We've been waiting for this.
Yes. All right. Parks.
One before that. Oh, thank you. We got a CDBG. There it is. All right, so this is resolution 13-2024 for community development block grant intergovernmental agreement renewal with Multnomah County. So just a quick backstory on CDBG. Basically, this is a consortium of cities and other agencies that sit on a board with Multnomah County. Every year they review qualifying projects, and every other year is a Wood Village year. So we alternate with the city of Fairview as being one of the only two cities eligible for projects. And so instead of competing with each other every year, we decided one year is Wood Village, the other year is Fairview, and vice versa. Over the years, we've done a lot of our park improvements with CDBG grant funding. In years past, when the rules were different, did some sewer lateral repair work and a whole bunch of other improvements. So it's a great program. It's a federal pass-through that goes to the county then to other underlying jurisdictions or nonprofit agencies. So every 3 years, we do have to renew basically the agreement to join back into this consortium. It's the same exact agreement, just with the dates changed. So you don't have to approve it. And if you don't, we don't get any CDBG grant funding for the next 3 years. And so the staff recommendation is to adopt and approve Resolution 13, 2024. Supports these two goals. And got a motion right there, and happy to answer any questions.
Okay. But this isn't saying that we got the one we applied for yet.
Correct. So this isn't an agreement for funding. It's just to remain in basically the consortium of agencies within the CDBG review board and eligibility. For our current project, we did get basically, I want to say funded because they don't have their federal allocation yet. So it's always based on when they get the money from the federal government, how much that is and what our proportion is. But we were recommended for funding based on them getting that federal funding.
Other questions? All right, somebody make a motion.
I move to approve Resolution 13-2024, authorizing the city manager to execute the IGA with Multnomah County for the CDBG funding 2025 to 2027.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded, Resolution 13, 2024. All those in favor of that?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank
Passes
you very
unanimous.
much. Right, save the heavy hitting thing for last.
Parks Commission.
Yeah, it is, but I can't see where my presentation went. Let me close out some windows here. There it is.
There it is.
There we go. All right. All right, recap of the Parks Commission meeting from May 1st. So Parks Commission met partly on your request when we looked at the field and facility reservation policy and program revisions. You all said, hey, let's let Parks take a crack at that, have them weigh in. And so since we had a meeting with them, we also gave them an update on some park projects. And then through that, the biggest discussion was on the park entry sign discussion and some next steps. So to remind you all what this project is, it's for this corner here. So as you're entering the City Hall and Park property off of Halsey, it sits on this corner. So kind of the intersection of a lot of the driveways and things. And the thought was to create some sort of welcoming wayfinding thing that we had showed the parks back in the fall time of this. Turned out we couldn't afford that. And so we tried to pivot to several different options, finally landing on this one here on the right. That's a prefab model. Now, granted, the intent was to use it for directional, kind of a welcome message, et cetera. In discussing with the parks, it did not resonate with them. But I think both aesthetically, functionality, staff came back after that meeting and really took a big think on what really is the intent of this space. What do we want it to do? And so instead of trying to rush to get something done, and that was some of the allure of the prefab unit, we could get it this fiscal year.
Greg, could I,
Yes.
did you say that the prefab didn't
Prefab one on the right
resonate?
did not.
Yeah, okay. It's all right. I did.
I like a cold bowl of soup. I mean, it was fine if you're hungry, but it wasn't like, that's good.
Yes. Okay.
That's a good way to explain it.
Yeah.
Um,
It shouldn't have showed it to us like that.
Well, and we even talked like, again, it showed it as very infographic heavy, and that wasn't the intent. We didn't replace it with our own graphics, but really it did get us back to talking what's the intent? What do we want at this space? And so staff has decided to actually roll over that capital allocation in the next fiscal year so we can kind of continue exploring design options and alternatives to really get something that does excite them more than day old porridge. So
Cold soup, I like that. I'll tell Mary.
so that was the biggest part and update of all the park projects. Everything else, the field maintenance, CDBG, the wetlands park, all very, very good. Parks was really pleased to hear about the start of an accumulating fund for the playground replacement and how in the upcoming year we'll work with them and community members of what do we want to replace it with? Understand we're not going to replace it this year or next, but in a few years we'll replace it. And so what's that total? So what do we need to continue to add? They really loved that. The rest of the meeting and the bulk of it was spent on that reservation policy. So again, under the current framework, our application, this list of multi-purpose field doesn't really break it up. There's no charge if there's non-commercial use in less than 100 people. Part of that is it retains recreational immunity, meaning that if someone uses a park facility enough to pay for it and by some means or manner there's an injury, we're not liable for that. Or if there's a non-commercial but over 100 people, it's $100 fee plus insurance. And the insurance is because now we're charging a fee for that and want to make sure that they have insurance. And again, this 100 people adds a lot of use to the park. So we want to help cover that. And then commercial is 500 plus insurance. The bulk of our field reservations are Play East affiliates or smaller gatherings for the most part, family reunions, picnic activities, et cetera. But there have been some others that have wanted to use either a piece or a large portion, which spurred some of this conversation to avoid potential conflicts, being that there was no field delineation, it's the field. We've informally prioritized Play East and we just wanted to, talk with you all and the parks about that, what to do when we get a large event request, not city event or affiliate events, but someone comes and says, hey, I want to use your whole field for X. What do we do with that? And then to make sure that it still has a community use and benefit since it is the Wood Village community that pays for the maintenance, they should have use of it. So in that, this is what we showed you back in, I believe it was March, how we delineated the field out. Parks really liked that, resonated well with them, splitting it up. Basically, anyone could use field number one, because again, it gets a lot of use, whether they're renting or reserving the picnic shelter, they can do family games, activities there. Or if someone wants to do a small soccer thing, they could do 3, but that doesn't preclude someone from doing something on another field. So splitting up made a lot of sense. Prioritizing Play East was, that resonated throughout and they really want to capture that. And that a full field reservation would be very limited, only a few times a year because the field should be open to the community and for community partners only. And that's mostly through Play East and its partners. But for example, like Amilo Inc., who partners with us on a lot of our events, they're holding a fundraiser here next month. But even they're not using the full field, a bit of the plaza and then the walking trails. Again, field section 1 open to anyone, and then all facility reservations, again, not including Play East and such as camps, would be capped at 4 hours per reservation. So if someone wants the picnic shelter, that's a 4-hour chunk of time, and then it provides an opportunity for someone else to have it. And then no adjustments to the fee schedule were proposed. So what we showed you earlier about most stuff is at no charge. They were fine with that. And then they also said, let's promote that ball field area now that we've restored it a bit and have some plans to do a little more refurbishment work to it. Let's get it some use and let the community know it is available for, if not T-ball or, smaller scale softball, maybe an adult kickball league or something of that nature. Let's get it some use. So, that was the Cliff Notes version of a probably over hours long conversation with parks. I know we have some members here who were there. And if you'd like to add to that, go over something I may have missed or glossed over.
No, I think pretty well hit it.
Yeah, those Cliff Notes hit it really well.
So basically, the plan would be to take all of this and update the current program and policy, bring it back to the future meeting for formal adoption. But certainly happy to answer questions you have about any of this, next steps, or other park usage.
Thumbs up. Okay,
Great. We'll
Wait
work on
for it.
this and bring it back probably late June or first part of July.
well, and what I've heard is that the Parks Commission, we're pretty much in alignment with the conversations we had, and before we sent it to them, so, we're all
Yeah, no, we had,
thinking along the same lines.
Two new Parks members, they had some great questions and great things. And it was like, oh yeah, this is a new board. Gotta think about my presentation style a little bit.
Yeah. Okay.
I do have a handful of things, more updates and things. So first, we do have a council opening and it's open through the month. So again, if you're out and about talking with community members or people, it's on our website, or if you want to send me a link, I can send you a direct link to the application, but that does close the end of the month. And then there'll be interviews at your first June meeting for that. We also have openings on our planning commission. We lost Janice Dole, she lived with her daughter. They relocated to Washington, D.C. So opening on planning commission. Two
planning?
Two planning positions. Potentially by the end of the year, there'll be a third. We do have a potential for a 3 city council meeting on June 17th to talk about fire. I'll send out an email with that date and time and a kind of a bullet point agenda. But it's really the 3 cities talking together about the next steps on fire and making sure that we're okay with all the potential RFPs, who's going to be the lead agency, and that we're asking the right questions of those consultants.
That's a Monday,
Yes.
June 17th.
I
Okay.
will not be here. I'll be out of town.
Again?
Yeah,
It's okay.
it's the summer.
Yeah, no, it's okay. Just
If you haven't already received
going to
it,
Hawaii again?
No.
Hey.
Becky will be sending,
October.
Hey, guys, pay attention.
yeah, if you haven't received it yet, Becky will be sending you my evaluation to complete and fill out. And that will be again, the first meeting in June. You'll discuss that. And then cleanup is this Saturday, 9 to noon. Already aware some can't make that, but if others can, you're more than welcome to
I've come down.
help unload.
And this is the second one I've missed, and I'm gonna tell my granddaughter that, you're gonna celebrate your birthday on another day
Be there.
in the future, so.
And then last but not least, we have our appreciation event, June 13th. June 13th, our appreciation dinner. So if you have an RSVP, please do so.
You can go to that one.
Is that all you got? Council, any reports from individuals or comments? I'll start down with Councilor Tan.
I do not have anything.
No,
Councilor Clark.
I didn't make it to yesterday's meeting. I was,
Oh. Well, I don't think you missed it.
anything interesting happen?
Huh?
Did anything happen at our East Multnomah County Transportation Committee?
Nothing super exciting. No, there's a lot of projects going on this summer, so.
Council President, Rio Campus, so you wanna, one of the things you probably could talk about was the Play East celebration.
Yeah. It was a blur, so.
Yeah. Sure.
No, yeah, it was last Thursday. It was a great event. We reached our budgeted goal of $40,000, so that was exciting. I think that's the first time we've actually hit our goal in some time. So, yeah, I appreciate everybody's help and everyone that donated. So.
Greg and I were having a conversation, and I noticed how he worded it in his weekly. The raffle tickets. What was the dollar amount raised there, so I don't misstate it?
Yeah, so the number I gave was a collective of folks that were actually donating at the event and then the raffle. The raffle items alone, it was $860 worth.
And then there are
So-
other people just donated.
Yeah, so we,
So got a
we got about,
15?
we got about another $800 worth of just individual donations.
And
So-
that hasn't happened at
That
one of
hasn't
those
happened,
events
yeah.
either, not at that volume.
So collectively, we did over $1,600 at the event, which is pretty.
Well, that's
amazing.
good. That's,
That really hit our threshold.
well, I
there,
thought
so.
that was very interesting when I heard that. So, I don't think I have anything smart to say. It's pretty late for me to think of something smart. No, I don't have anything. It's, so I think, council? Any,
No, I repeat the history of
yeah,
home rule in Oregon, and it'll take 2 hours, and there'll be some interactive breakout sessions.
oh, we like that idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, then, if there's nothing else,